Your settings on controller lay the groundwork for all your success. While great settings won't make you a great player, bad settings will definitely hold you back. What's up guys, it's Valued, and today we're going to take a close look at some ALC settings and how you should be approaching them depending on your playstyle. Even pro players have a huge variance in their settings from player to player, but today's video is going to be all about helping you dial in the same way they do. So, before we even get into the ALC settings, we've got to chat about the most important thing with any controller layout or setting: muscle memory. No matter what settings you're on, you require time to get used to these settings, and this time is required for you to make the most out of them. Even if you're on some wacky button layout that no one else can comprehend, if you're comfortable on these settings, then you're going to perform better on them. Even if you went and copied a pro settings right now, you're likely to have quite a while before you adjust and begin playing well on those settings. Any setting change is going to be a process, even if it's just a minor change that doesn't seem like it will affect your gameplay much. Understanding this will help you stay open-minded and, most of all, not get frustrated as you learn to perform on your new settings. So the first step to having good controller settings is to understand what your goal is with your setting changes. ALC settings get really in-depth, so you don't want to be going into this screen and changing a bunch of values without a clear mindset on how you're approaching these changes. So many players think they can just copy a pro settings or watch a video like this and it's going to be the magic recipe for success. In reality, you have to have the knowledge of the settings to be able to fine-tune them to your liking, and have a dense knowledge of your preferences so you can actually find that sweet spot. Knowing what your shortcomings are and how to go about adjusting them is how you truly get value out of your ALC settings. Are you overcorrecting your shots? Is your sense too low for close range engagement or movement? Are you having a hard time with a certain weapon or scope? Or maybe you're just having trouble stringing together inputs effectively in high stress moments. There's a ton of issues just like these that your controller settings can cause you to have, but every single one of us has a unique set of weaknesses. It's important for you to be able to identify what those weaknesses and pain points of your gameplay are and really make sure these are being caused by a settings issue before you go tweaking all your stuff. And like we just talked about, if you're having a hard time pinpointing those causes, make sure to head over to ProGuides.com. Sometimes all you need is a little bit of help. And there, you'll find top-level coaches specially trained to help you identify and improve on your weaknesses. With so many aspects of the game, it's tough to really dial into what needs to improve about your game. If you're ready to find out exactly what those weaknesses are and conquer them, then check out the top link in the description below and commit to improving. Alright guys, so rather than going through every single possible combination of concerns you could be having with your settings, let's dive into some of the major ALC settings and talk about exactly how they adjust your controller and what types of issues they can resolve if dialed in properly. So the first few settings are going to adjust exactly how your stick goes about receiving input. Dead zones and outer threshold is going to adjust how much input your controller needs to reach certain requirements. Dead zones change how much input is needed for your stick to start registering an input, and outer threshold is how much input is needed for your stick to reach maximum input. Too low of a dead zone and you'll have super touchy sticks that move on their own or drift. Too high of a dead zone and you'll have a really clunky, unresponsive aim. And for the outer threshold, if you put this to a high value, you're shortening the entire range of how precise your stick can be. A really high setting will have you reach maximum input really quickly, and the lower the setting, the smoother and more gradual the input will be. As for response curve, this setting adjusts how your sensitivity curves throughout the entire space now defined by these two previous settings. It adjusts how your sensitivity will interact with this usable space for your stick. Think of this setting as creating a hill that you'll have to climb as your stick reaches maximum input. The lower this value, the more steep and touchy your stick will be. The higher the value, the more gradual and level your stick movement will be. These settings are incredibly important as they set the stage for every other ALC setting. If you have any one of these settings at a place you're not comfortable with, you're gonna have some really awkward feeling settings. I would recommend keeping dead zones as low as you can without having drift. Keep your outer threshold as close to 1% as possible, and stick between 4 and 10 for your response curve. This last one is entirely preference, so just play around with this value a bit until you have something that feels comfortable. Just know that most players don't go outside the 4 to 10 range. Now, the next major section of ALC settings is about fine-tuning your sensitivity. It's really a lot less complicated than it seems, but let's do a quick overview. The word yaw refers to horizontal movement and pitch refers to vertical movement. So when we see yaw in pitch speed, this is just referring to horizontal and vertical sensitivity. If you're looking to match these up with the default settings, each one sensitivity in those settings comes out to about 50 points in yaw or pitch speed. So if you have a 5 to 3 cents on default settings, you should look to set these values to 250 for yaw and 150 for pitch. This understanding right here is at the core of nearly every remaining ALC setting, and this simple understanding is enough for you to begin fine-tuning your sensitivity even further. Turning extra yaw in pitch will adjust how much look acceleration you have up and down or side to side, and the ramp up time and delay are there if you want to make sure that acceleration isn't kicking in when you're going for precise movements. The ramp up time and delay are settings most top players don't use, but if you feel like your extra yaw or pitch is speeding up too often and messing with your accuracy, you can implement a small value for these. I know there's a lot of info in your ALC settings, but what's important is to anchor your changes in the issues that you've been personally having. All of these settings come together and interact with each other, so it can be really tough to understand what should be adjusted. So let's go over a scenario where you're finding yourself overcorrecting on your shots and are looking for ways to help in your ALC settings. So first, this could be because you have too high of a sensitivity overall. If you feel like this is a consistent thing, even when hip firing, you should lower your overall yaw if it's a left to right issue, or pitch if it's more of an up and down issue. A lot of players keep their horizontal sense a bit higher for this very reason, allowing them to fine-tune their ability to track an enemy running across a field, without having them accidentally shooting too high or too low. Most aiming in Apex is going to be left to right, so keeping a lower yaw speed helps you to stay accurate on moving targets. Now, this issue could also be caused by you having a touchy stick input. If your dead zone or response curve are too low, this can make your stick feel really sensitive, causing you to struggle with micro adjustments. This could also be caused by having your outer threshold at too high of a value, causing your stick to hit max input really fast, causing it to be really touchy. And lastly, if the first two things didn't help you with this issue, if you're having a hard time pinpointing enemies while ADSing, you can consider implementing some ADS-specific sensitivities on their own. Rather than increasing or decreasing your overall sensitivity, you can adjust your ADS pitch and yaw speed to give you a bit more control over your ADS specifically. This option is great because it won't cause you to be playing at a really high sense, but it can help you make sure you have the perfect sense for when you're looking to aim and fight. You can combine changes to these values with changes to your per optic sensitivities as well. This optic sense setting is great for further tuning your settings to make sure you feel perfectly dialed in no matter the range. So guys, I know this might seem like a lot, but odds are you have one or two specific aspects of your aim that you're really looking to improve on, and that'll be easier to do once you break it down. If you can pinpoint what they are and use this process to make sure you have every single setting working in your favor, you will be feeling so much better on the sticks. As we talked about earlier, remember that these things take time. While you may be able to point out what aspect of your ALC settings are holding you back, don't forget that even after you make changes, it's gonna feel awkward for a while. Muscle memory doesn't just kick in when you have the perfect settings, so while you might feel like this will be an instant improvement, you've still got to kick the habits that you've built up from dealing with a sense that's a little bit off, or even just changing your button layout. Make sure you're only making adjustments that you're thinking through rationally, and don't go making sweeping changes to your settings. Focus on one thing at a time, making incremental adjustments, feeling it out for a little bit, and then decide if you should make any more adjustments. Realistically, this isn't something you should do a lot. If you're on your 4th or 5th rounds of setting changes, you probably should stop. At that point, make that your final tune, stick with something, and learn to play on it. Having pretty good settings that you're used to is better than having possibly better settings that you're not comfortable on at all. And that's gonna do it for today's deep dive in ALC settings. I wanted to take more of an approach on fully understanding how to use these settings to improve your game, rather than just recommending the best settings. This is something that's super subjective, and if you really want to find the best settings, this process we outlined today will have you catapulting in that direction. Anyway, guys, hopefully you enjoyed the video. As always, it's been your boy Valued, and I'll see you guys in the next one.